Alright, so the Kar-Chee reign was written by Avram Davidson. Davidson was born in New York City. He served in World War II with the Marines in the Pacific Theater. I believe he was a combat medic. Um, he was very popular in the 1960s. He was also the editor for the magazine of fantasy and sci-fi in the early 60s. The 1960s do seem to be the height of the height of his popularity. So he lived in Mexico as an adult. He lived in Belize as an adult. He eventually settled for a while in Central California. When he got old, he moved to Washington State, and I believe that's where he was living when he passed away. He was born Jewish. He was born to Jewish parents, but he converted to Tenrikyo, which is a Japanese religion. He converted to that religion in the 1970s. So Davidson wrote fantasy, he wrote sci-fi, he wrote crime fiction, he wrote a few different types of genre fiction. He won a Hugo Award. He won 3 World Fantasy Awards. He won a Lifetime Achievement Award for his work in the fantasy genre. He won other awards that are genre fiction awards, and he was also a finalist for a lot of awards. He wrote 2 books in the Kar-Chee series. The first one to be released, I believe, was Rogue Dragon, which again I have not read, but I should be getting to pretty soon, and hopefully I'll have a video out on it in the next few weeks. And then the Kar-Chee reign, and yeah, today we are going over the latter, the Kar-Chee reign. So the world of the Kar-Chee reign, there's a lot of exposition in this book, particularly at the beginning. There's some later on where the narrator kind of zooms out from the play-by-play of the actions of the characters and gives us some summary of the world. But yeah, all the exposition is pretty poetic, pretty well done. Most of the exposition is just straight world building. Davidson is known as being kind of a more literary author, so he does a good job with prose. But the Earth of this book, it's been, as a planet, it's been completely stripped of all valuable resources. This was done so that humanity could build enough spaceships to get almost all of its population off-world and into the depths of space. Earth is eventually completely devoid of any valuable resources, and there's this very small population of humans that were left behind. It is detailed that the people who went to the stars have now forgotten their home world, so Earth is kind of like a backwater planet with a very small population that no one really knows about. That's around when the Kar-Chee show up. The narrator of the book theorizes that the Kar-Chee specialize in stripping already dead worlds of anything left behind, so they seem to kind of specialize in exploiting the resources of planets that have already been completely stripped of all resources. The Kar-Chee submerge continents, whole continents, islands, everything. They stick them below the sea. They sink them below the sea, and then they raise land from underwater. And that's where they get a lot of their resources, is from land that was previously underwater. This obviously causes great upheaval for the Earth as a planet, and then for humanity as a species as well. Alright, now I'm going to get into summarizing the plot. It has been a week or two since I've read this book, and I did take notes and stuff, but I apologize in advance if this plot summary is not super in-depth. I only had the idea of doing this video after I'd finished the book. Anyway, so chapter 1, the book opens with a gathering at a home site and strangers showing up to the community. The father figure of the clan, the people that are already there, sends his 2 sons to go hunt in order to feed their new guests. The 2 sons are joined by some of their guests who are around their age. They go uphill and further inland for their hunt. They don't find any game, which is unusual for them. Usually they find a good amount of stuff to hunt. Eventually they spot some of the Kar-Chee, some of the aliens, and the boys are completely freaked out. They've never seen any of these aliens before. This chapter also features a couple sections of just kind of general scene setting and world building that I've already kind of summarized in the world building section. And then chapter 2 features a group of refugees stuck on a raft. They are starving and they don't have any fresh water. They don't have any food. They have very little supplies. Then we kind of get a little backtrack, and the group's journey fleeing away from the aliens is depicted. They previously lived on land, and the Kar-Chee invaded their land, and so they continually fled and eventually took to the sea. Their plight seems super dire, and you just kind of assume that all these people are going to die pretty soon unless there's a major change. And then in chapter 3, we go back to the characters from chapter 1, and the boys who went hunting return to their village. They share news of seeing the aliens, and then a discussion of what everyone should do starts. Some people doubt what the boys saw. Some people think that they couldn't have seen these aliens. Other people feel like their situation is now pointless because of how powerful the aliens are and how and the reputation aliens have for killing and maiming any humanity that they find. The whole situation is kind of complicated by the fact that this community only knows of these aliens from cave paintings. That's the only confirmation they have that they exist. They've never personally encountered any of these aliens. So the aliens are basically legends to them, like mythological creatures from the past. And eventually their plight leads the whole community into this very depressing stasis where everyone just kind of sits around thinking about how pointless their lives are now because of the aliens. So then chapter 4, the people on the raft are saved by a group of survivors on a high-tech boat. The boat is called the Ark. The survivors on the Ark are known as the Knowers. They think their main belief is that the aliens, the Kar-Chee, only attack human colonies because of the humans in that colony's sins. So they think that by avoiding sin, they can avoid being attacked and killed by the aliens. And that people who are attacked deserve it because of their prior actions. The chapter depicts these two groups getting to know one another and discussing things such as when they will land on shore. We are also introduced to some of the Knowers' odd practices, like forced celibacy. In this chapter, the Knowers and their leader, who I think is called Gaspar, seem odd and strange, but somewhat innocuous, somewhat harmless. Like they're just kind of weirdos. But they don't necessarily seem dangerous. The chapter ends with the two storylines converging as the ocean people, the people on the Ark and the raft, land where the people from chapter 1 and 3 have their settlement. And then chapter 5 is kind of about the two groups mixing and getting to know one another, or actually the three groups mixing and getting to know one another. And then some of the characters journey uphill and further into the island, further inland. And they split up into two groups and start searching for confirmation that the Kar-Chee are actually around. Then we get to chapter 6, where they encounter the Kar-Chee as the aliens are stripping the land of valuable material. They marvel at the aliens' advanced technology. Just a little aside, the humans are pretty low tech. They seem to have kind of regressed in terms of their technology and seem maybe even like pre-industrial revolution levels of technology. So they observe the aliens for a while. They eventually have to flee the aliens by going into caves. Liam, who's kind of the main character of the entire novel, he's part of the group that were stuck on the raft in chapter 2. He's kind of like the main hero, the main character. So Liam has always been obsessed with maps. which are basically a forgotten piece of technology at this point in humanity's history. But he does know that if they had maps, their lives would be better. And he seems to have, by the end of the chapter, he finds a map that was created by the Kar-Chee. So then the group encounter more Kar-Chee, and one of them, Rikar, is captured. Rikar is the son of the Knowers' leader. The rest of them try to fight the aliens, but the aliens escape to their underground cavern base. I believe this is the chapter where the aliens are shown kind of playing with their human captive, kind of sportively torturing a human. And then the Knowers, the rest of them make it back to the settlement, and the Knowers' leader, Gaspar, believes that Rikar, who is his son, must have deserved his fate of being captured, which kind of goes back to their core beliefs, which is that humans always deserve what the Kar-Chee do to them. The humans did kill a couple aliens as they try to stop the aliens from taking Rikar. So they take their bodies and start creating costumes out of their bodies. Then we get to chapter 8, where wearing the costumes and pretending their companions are their prisoners, a group of survivors led by Liam make their way into the alien base. They are pursued by someone or something, but they can't figure out what is pursuing them. They just hear noises and stuff behind them, noises of someone walking and stuff or running. They then discover the alien base, which is a vast underground cavern, a vast underground dome, which is underneath the water, since all the stuff on land is taking place on the coast. In this underground cavern, the Kar-Chee are hard at work mining and gathering minerals. Eventually, they find Rikar and turn around to go back to the surface. The aliens figure out that there are humans around, and they begin pursuing the group. And this is kind of a little twist that's thrown in there, but the group are obstructed by the Knowers' leader and his henchmen, who try to stop their escape because, according to the Knowers, humans deserve what the aliens do to them. And so Liam and the rest are messing with the natural order of things and also stopping God's will from being enacted. They are forced to kill the Knowers' leader and his main accomplice, who's kind of like his lieutenant. So they make it back to the rest of the group, and they discuss what they have learned about the aliens. Rikar kind of steals off and goes back to the alien base to avenge his father's death. And Liam and some of the others begin their plot to take down the aliens and blow up their dome, their underground dome, their underground cavern. So the group of humans who are not trying to blow up the aliens are supposed to move further inland. Only most of them do. Not everyone does, but a lot of them do. And then Liam blows up the aliens' underground dome. Since it's, like I said, since it's under the water, under the ocean, water rushes in and drowns the aliens. This causes a pretty massive earthquake and a pretty massive tsunami and a lot of kind of natural destruction. So the very end of the book is like a montage where Liam becomes a heroic figure who goes around freeing humanity from the dangers of the Kar-Chee. He becomes something like a warlord and a very heroic figure where he's kind of leading humanity against the Kar-Chee and is very successful. So that's the end of the plot summary. So now I'm going to analyze the plot a little bit. There doesn't seem to be an allegory in this book. It doesn't seem to be allegorical as a whole. I don't really feel like it's that much of a comment on the world of the 1960s in which it was, the world in which it was written and created. That being said, the space race would have been a massive, massive thing in the news and thing that people talked about and thought about around the time of the book's creation. So the book could be seen as a commentary on the space race and what would be lost if humanity focused completely on space instead of the Earth. Like I went over earlier, humanity just completely strips the earth of all valuable resources and doesn't, and then kind of forgets about it. So this would have been before climate change was a thing. It would have been before climate change was really discovered to be a thing. But the book does seem to address the possibility of the earth being fucked up in a way that can't be reversed. The book could also be seen as a bit of a commentary on endless consumerism, where the end result of constantly buying and disposing of stuff will eventually lead to a scarcity of resources, you would think. It also seems to be a commentary on how people seem to forget the past whenever a shiny new thing comes around, and how people just kind of forget the past in general. So I would say the book features aspects of climate fiction, cli-fi, and weird fiction, which I've already been over a little bit, some of the odder parts. And it also is part of the Dying Earth genre. Gene Wolfe and Jack Vance are kind of the most famous people in the Dying Earth genre. I haven't read any Jack Vance yet. I'll probably eventually make some videos about him, I'd imagine. But I have read Gene Wolfe, mostly his Solar Cycle series, including Book of the New Sun. So yeah, the Kar-Chee Reign did remind me of Book of the New Sun a good amount. They're both Dying Earth stories featuring aliens exploiting the remains of Earth. They also both feature humanity scattering themselves to the stars and forgetting where they came from. That is more of a thing. That second part is more of a thing in the long sun and short sun parts of the solar cycle. But it is an aspect of Book of the New Sun as well. So there's a quote in the book. In the Kar-Chee Reign, there can be no right action without right knowledge. This very much reminded me of the ASEAN correct thought from Book of the New Sun. I was so convinced that the two were related that I opened the Citadel of the Artok right after finishing Kar-Chee to check and see if Wolfe stole it from Davidson. It's not in there, and Wolfe didn't steal anything. I was wrong. I could definitely see, because the Kar-Chee Reign would have come out about 10-15 years before Book of the New Sun. So it's quite possible that Wolfe, who's known as being a very, very well read, could have read this book. There are some similarities to Starship Troopers with the bug stuff, with the focus on bugs as the alien enemy. There's also an underground hive in both Starship Troopers and Kar-Chee Reign. Although I think the underground hive is more of a thing in the Starship Troopers movie than in the book, which I've read the Starship Troopers book. It's been at least 5 years since I've read it. I don't remember it super well. I do remember the movie very well because I've watched it probably at least 3 times, if not like 5 or 6. One thing I liked about the book is that Liam, the main character, he kind of occupies this kind of strange, wild-eyed, messianic figure character type. He seems to be more like, he doesn't seem to be an example of a future human. He seems more like some type of weird figure sourced from our primordial past. Like he seems like almost like a character from prehistory or something. And then the Knowers, which I've already been over their beliefs and stuff, they are pretty cool as secondary villains to the book. They're introduced pretty innocuously, but they eventually grow to be kind of the secondary villains after the aliens. I do feel like the aliens are not terribly fleshed out. We don't get to know a lot about their civilization, about their hierarchies, about a lot of stuff about them. But they are really worthy and interesting adversaries, I'd say, and I did enjoy a lot of the sections devoted to them. The ending of the book is foreshadowed pretty nicely. It does seem to be a logical ending that's worked up towards. It feels earned. The ending feels earned in a way that other books I've read recently couldn't really pull off. I do feel like the ending of the book is one of the stronger parts and is worth the journey to get there. All right, so here are my opinions on the story. I enjoyed it a lot. I found it easy to follow and super easy to visualize. But I still really thought the writing and the prose was very beautiful. There's some depth to the book. It does seem to be, in some ways, a commentary on religious fundamentalism, for example, and other things. I mean, there's some really cool action set pieces in this book, which are really entertaining. It's a nice mix of originality and a mixture with of like kind of more original stuff with well-known tropes. The villains of the story, the Kar-Chee and the dragons, seem to be kind of inherently unfathomable. Davidson, as the narrator, compares the way that the aliens see humanity to the way that we see things like ants and bees. Where if you think about it, ants and bees, they build stuff. They have hierarchical societies, kind of like we do. I think you get where I'm going with that. But we don't think of ants and bees as really anything more than nuisances. Often to be played with. We don't really take them seriously, if you get what I'm saying, which is just kind of how the aliens seem to treat humanity, as just incidental nuisances. I do feel like this book would make a great action-packed movie, especially the book's ending. If used in the movie, the very end, it kind of does set up a seemingly endless number of sequels that would feature Liam as some kind of like Conan type, like Conan the Barbarian, who's like reconquering the world and taking the Earth back from the Kar-Chee. As far as a grade for this story, this book, I would give it an A-/an A. I really enjoyed it. I do think it could be a little more original. I'm not super familiar with sci-fi previously to this book. I believe this book came out in 1966. I'm not an expert on sci-fi from before that time, but I do think there's probably a fair amount in here that was included in other books. Although this is the only time I've ever encountered anything about people or aliens bringing land, the undersea land, to the air or whatever. There's parts of this book that I haven't encountered in other fiction, which I thought was interesting. It's definitely a nice length. It's not too long, not too short. I'm unsure of the word count, but I don't think if it can't be qualified as a novella, I think it's pretty close to novella length. It's not long enough to be a full length novel. I'd say it's kind of in some nether region between novella and novel. But I didn't. It's very easy to read, and I read it very quickly, and it didn't take me very long at all, which I enjoyed. There's a lot of good foreshadowing in this book. Everything seems logical. The plot progression seems logical and stuff. So, and it does a good job of making characters likable, but not overly likable. No one's a Mary Sue really. No one's super overpowered, but everyone seems, even if they're not likable or whatever, the characters are consistent, and yeah. I also feel like the human villains, the knowers, are also humanized pretty well. They seem like real people, like it could be kind of realistic. Yeah, so that's the ending of this review, this analysis, this plot summary. I am hoping to do a series on kind of lesser, well-known sci-fi from before the 2000s, before the year 2000, kind of going over stuff that I don't think there's a lot of videos about, if there's any videos about, and highlighting some older books that I either enjoy or hope I'll enjoy. So I hope you'll be along for the ride with that. Thanks.